But and it's probably the most important question of your life, is to find out what you really want to do.
Well, with that kind of endorsement, then I'd love to go further into it.
Okay. Well, you know, it's chapter 1 of Mastery. It's called Discover Your Life's Task, your calling in life, your vocation, however you want to describe it. And I say it's the most important decision that you'll ever make, because it won't not only will it determine your career, your success, how much money you make, it will also determine how happy you are, how fulfilled you feel in life. I have numerous quotes from people like Leonardo da Vinci and others that the worst thing is to be turning 50, 60 years old and to feel like you never realized your potential. You never did what you felt like you could have done.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the worst feeling. So you don't want to have that feeling, particularly if you're younger in your 20s and you have more options, or even in your 30s. So it's a question of knowing yourself, you know. The Oracle of Delphi in ancient Greece, which was the center of all wisdom, the priestess in the Oracle of Delphi was supposedly in touch with the god Apollo, who would tell her the truth of anything in the universe. And what was the inscription above the Oracle of Delphi was, know yourself, know thyself. It's the start of all wisdom. So your tendency will be, when you're a child, when you're 5 or 6, to kind of know that you like this, you like sports, you like physical activity, or you like music, or you like words, or you like working with your hands. You have a feel for it. It's natural. And as you get older, you start to listen to other people, and you lose a sense of who you are. You listen to your parents who tell you, Brendan, you got to become a lawyer. You need to go into this field. Your friends are all scrambling to make a lot of money, and you lose this connection to who you are, to what your strengths are, to what you love. And the whole thing about learning is learning has to be fun. I know I'm contradicting myself in that I said frustration is good, but you need to also love what you're studying. So I give the example, I've said it many times in interviews, that if you're wanting to learn French, for instance, this is something that happened to me. In university, you know, you could spend years learning French from a professor, and after 2 years you go to France, you can't speak a damn word, right? Because you really weren't that interested, you weren't listening, it's not exciting, it's not fun. But you go to France and you meet a French girl and you're really excited and you want to seduce her, you want to whatever. All right, now you're motivated to learn French. You're really motivated, and it's fun. Mm-hmm. And you're listening to her and you're listening to others. And suddenly, in 2 weeks, you learn what in 2 years you never learned. The mind is more receptive when you're excited, when you're liking something, when you're interested in it. So we were talking about shortcuts. Well, it's not a shortcut, but it streamlines the process a little bit, because when you know that in your own experience, when you're studying math and you don't like math, it goes in one ear out the other. But if you love math, you're paying deep attention and you absorb things. So connecting to the subject, loving it, you will learn much faster. So you have to know yourself. You have to know what you're good at, what you love. There's a book I recommend for people. I can't remember the exact title. I think it's called The 5 Frames of Intelligence, something like that, by I think it's Howard Gardner. And he's basically saying that there are 5 forms of intelligence. One of them is kinetic, which has to do with physical motion. One is mechanical, having to do with spatial things. One is like music and math. One is words, etc. You're going to tend to have a mind that has one of these forms of intelligence. What is it? Know yourself. Know what that is. For me, it's language and words, etc. it's getting in contact with who you are, what you love, going back to that child, rooting out all the voices of your parents and your friends, finding those things that when you read online and you find a subject, what your eyes light up at, what you want to explore. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. It depends on how old you are, where you are in life. It's never too late to make an adjustment or to find who you are. I didn't write the 48 Laws of Power or start writing until I was 36. And up until that moment, I was kind of a lost soul. I was kind of unhappy and I was wandering around. It can take time. As long as you're trying, as long as you're exploring, it'll probably come. But if you're only following what other people are doing, you're in trouble. You might succeed for a while. You might get that law degree and make money, and when you're 28, like your mom and dad want you to. But by the time you're 34, you're tuning it out. You're drinking. You're getting on drugs. You're doing online porn. You're so out of it. You're so disconnected. You fall into various addictions, and it may not be something that destructive, but it's not engaging you. And you might have succeeded for a while, but you're going to pay a price. I'm telling you, it's the most important decision that you can have, is connecting to it and making it practical. So you're not going to want to become a poet or a rock musician just because you love music. All right, I'm going to start my own band. That's not necessarily practical, okay? But you love music. All right, let's find a path in music that is practical, that you can use. And maybe it will end up being a rock band, who knows? I don't want to discourage that, but I knew I wanted to write. That gave me the latitude to explore this vast area and then find my niche. Mm-hmm. You know that you love working with your hands. Okay, explore this. Or you love computers. Explore the whole area and you'll find your niche. But you've got to know what that first overall ecosphere is that you want to explore. Brandon, we could talk about it for hours, so I'm just going to shut up at this point, but you need to read Mastery to know more about it. But it is literally, to me, I want you to look at it as life and death, because you can spiritually die from engaging most of your working hours, your mental energy, in something that you don't love.
Well, yeah, and the things you talk about that people would slip into in a situation like that, the drugs, pornography, alcohol, that is a path to death. That is, I mean, yeah. Even if you're not dead, living where you use those things as crutches to get you through the day,
yeah,
is a path to death.
And there are a lot of people like that in the world today.
Definitely.
I mean, the great thing about the times that we live in is that there's more latitude than ever. People of color, people of minorities, women, barriers are falling down. You could choose, more latitude for that. We don't have to follow what our father did. I don't have to become what, in the past. We're kind of more pigeonholed into what careers you could have. And there's this vast area on the internet, et cetera, access to information and knowledge. So it could be a golden era for finding yourself in this way, but it's also a very dark era in that there are many paths to lose yourself in. And so you have to be strong and you have to know that this is the path that I want to follow, and to follow it with a lot of energy, because there are a lot of dangers in the world.
Yeah, and it takes a disciplined person, I think, to pursue something in the way that you talk about in Mastery, to keep working at it when there are so many options. And you could try to be a doctor and a lawyer and a dentist and all those things all at once and keep them open rather than pursuing.
Yeah, and I like giving concrete examples. So I give one more example on this subject. There's somebody I talk about in there, Paul Graham, who started a company most recently called Y Combinator. I mean, he started it 12 years ago, and he sold it, but it's a $1 billion company in Silicon Valley. He's a genius. He's a master, and I like his story because of the path. He loved computers. He was a hacker. I mean, a real hacker when he was 17 years old, back in the 70s, when hacking was, there weren't very many of them. And then so he got into computer sciences, and he thought that was his path. And AI, when AI in the late 70s, when AI was not really, nobody knew about it. And then it wasn't quite working. He wasn't happy. It didn't feel right. He hated academia. He hated politics. He hated offices. He's a rebel. He gave it all up, and he decided, I want to be an artist. I want to paint. And he went to Italy, and he went to art school, and he learned to paint, and he really loved that. And then he came back to New York, and he was kind of an artist in his loft in New York. Wasn't making any money, but things were okay. And then he heard an ad on the radio in 1995 saying that the internet, the future of the internet is people will be selling things on the internet. And suddenly a light bulb went on in his head. He goes, man, all right, I've had all these skills. I could make a platform that will allow people to buy things on the internet. And I can design it because I've been studying design. In other words, not just computers and AI and all that. I've been studying what's aesthetics and what's pleasing to the eye and the psychology of art and how to design things. So he took all of his experience in hacking, in artificial intelligence, in art, and he created what ended up selling to Yahoo. I forget what it's called, Yahoo something or other. It was the first platform for selling things on the internet. He made a fortune. And that ended up leading to one other venture and then to Y Combinator. He didn't know what he was doing. He was lost. He tried different things, and by the time he was 30, he had developed 5 skill sets, literally, that were so solid that it would come together at some point. Something would trigger that moment on hearing something on the radio. It may not have been that. It may not have been Netscape. It may have been something else. But it's like a soil that was so fertile with skills. Something great was about to happen, and that's a path I think is really rich to imitate.
Yeah, it reminds me of how we often poeticize the myth of Steve Jobs, and how Steve Jobs studied calligraphy and fonts and things like that, and that was one more thing that was part of his path to mastery and becoming who he was.
Yeah.